残酷な天使のように少年よ神話になれ青い風が今胸のドアを叩いても私だけをただ見つめて微笑んでるあなたそっと触れるもの求めることに夢中で運命さえまだ知らない痛いけな瞳だけどいつか気づくでしょうその背中には
A month after the Ratmother incident, I was out in the Canadian woods during the winter time to blow off some steam by chopping and collecting lumber for the locals as well as being a local animal hunter. I lived in an old cabin that my grandfather built years back when I was in elementary school. The cabin was surrounded by woods except for a path leading to the town I sell lumber to. I was also taking care of a 3-week-old male falcon, also known as Ramiel. I would shoot birds out of the sky with my M1 Garand I got from an old friend back in the war who never made it back. Anyways, I would give these birds to Ramiel for breakfast, dinner and lunch. He and I would do such things as watch monkey documentaries such as Orangutan Jungle School and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. All was going well in my humble life as a lumberjack until I had a sense of unease while chopping down trees. I felt like I was back in the jungle, being on edge about everything and being aware of my surroundings, but then having them depleted when 15 of your men get gunned down from the trees. I snapped back to reality and smell a god-awful stench coming from the woods. I put my hatchet in its holster and I whip out the Bowie knife. My mind is telling me that some wolves probably killed a deer and it's just rotting nearby, but then I remember that I have never seen a wolf nor a bear near this part of the woods. I also remember that I'm the guy who had a 1v1 with a fucking dogman. I head into the woods looking for what creature the smell is coming from. At this point, I am so deep in the woods that I can't see the cabin, the smell still as potent as before, but then I wonder, the smell hadn't changed, so maybe I'm not following the smell, but the smell is following me. I turn around and see a black skinny figure with one half being covered by a tree. I ask who the hell the bastard is and I get no response. I raise my voice to ask the same thing with my fist held up, one with my knife clutched in between my hand. The fucker must have realized that I have a Bowie knife and he unhinges his jaw to make a noise like the ones I heard during Operation Wandering Soul combined with radio static. He climbs into the trees and runs away, at least I think so because the smell vanished. I head back to the cabin to see a deer head in the middle of a pentagram made out of blood, stained into the snow. I come home to pick up Ramiel to bring him to one of the locals that helps me take care of him. I come back home to see the logs I left were all charred and black like they have been burned. I get ready for the inevitable shitstorm this fucker is going to cause in my territory, so I go outside and piss and shit all over the pentagram. I empty the house to see if there are any supplies I need such as food or any fire starters, head outside, and throw some firewood in a pile, all the while I'm feeling watched. I place a log to sit on in front of the fire, as I bring out my grandfather's acoustic guitar and begin to play a tune.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down.
As I play, I see the bastard stand up from his position, revealing his true height. That fucker had to be around 10 to 11 feet tall. He began to unhinge his jaw like before to throw up the leftover deer carcass in attempts to scare me. He obviously fails in doing so, starts to do his radio screech while having his jaw still unhinged. I stared into the bastard's mouth and I saw stars, planets, the galaxy. I was speechless. Then I whipped out the M1 Garand and shot the bitch. He scurried back into the woods and I knew that was the last time I was going to see him come back on my land. I was thinking of calling it quits and leaving the place, but then I thought of the townsfolk and how they would have no chance of surviving against that thing. So I put my 4-gauge on my person, and I told myself, today I shall bring the battle to him. I head out into the woods in search of the creature that dares to walk on my land and hurt my people. No sign of the creature, no tracks, and thank God no smell, but there are multiple dismembered animal parts as well as blood stains in the snow. I also find sigils and other Satan shit carved into the trees. After hours of walking through the pines, I find a spot where I can rest. The spot where I was sitting felt so familiar, like before the operation, before the accident, during the war, the blood, the guts. The smell, the motherfucking smell. I wake up from my state and see the bastard on all fours looking at me and then bolting my way. I pull out the revolver and shot him in the face, but he rams me into a tree. I pump all my rounds but one into his chest and he began to weaken enough for me to kneecap the bitch. He gets loose and I get a good range to pull out my M1 Garand and began to fire on the demon. He would attempt to counterattack me but failed until he caught me with a reload where he grabbed my rifle and began to do his radio screech right in my face. I spit in his mouth and eyes and kicked him where his balls should be. He fell down and the screech got louder. I began to run into the trees, not knowing if I was heading towards the cabin or deeper into the pines. The bastard was in the trees trailing my ass, so the only thing I could do was run or pull out the old reliable Bowie knife, so I stopped to turn around and the bastard jumped down. We circled the spot where we were gonna fight and the bastard's arm began to morph into a nasty ass bone blade. I get into a fighting stance and he just stands there, no stance. No type of look of fear, only a smile. I charge at his arm with the bone blade to try to sever it. I ram my Bowie knife into his arm and punch him in his stupid smile. I knock out a couple of teeth and my gore the arm strat is working. He finds out what I'm trying to do and he began wiggling the shit out of his arm, starting up the screech in my ear. The bastard just made it better for me to cut his arm. He rams his head into my armor to try to stop me, but it's no use. His arm falls limp to the ground and I elbow him back, quickly drawing the 4-gauge from my back. He looks at me and unhinges his jaw to show me the void of space down his greasy gullet. I brush this off and blow his head off. I get knocked back from the recoil and I crawl my way to this comfortable looking spot. I pull out my Zippo and light the body as well as a cigarette, and I simply waited till dawn.
In a white room with black curtains in the station.